My name is Johanna Rossell. I'm the GM, the SVP for the Rare Disease Business Unit for Sumitomo Pharma. I wanted to make sure that I disclaim, as I do in all my interviews, that the opinions expressed in the podcast or in any of my interviews are the individual contributors and not Sumitomo Pharma. Here at Sumitomo Pharma, I manage an ultra rare disease for congenital athymia. As a company, we have different areas, but mine is specifically dedicated to this disease that has only 20 patients a year as an epi for the US, but specifically in the US, because we have the newborn screening, we're able to identify them and treat them with our product. The T cells are born in the bone marrow, but they come to mature in the thymus, and the thymus is located close to the heart. So that's, a process for everybody's immune system is composed of those. There is a very small population that, is born without a thymus that is functioning. It could be that the thymus could be there, but many of the cases the thymus is not even existent. Without the thymus, you don't have a functioning immune system. So any of the viruses and bacteria that we are exposed to every day will cause a big issue for these children. And their natural history shows that they don't survive more than 2 or 3 years of age without the treatment. As I said before, the advantage that we have in the US versus other countries, I think Germany is one of the only countries that also have a mandatory newborn screening, is that in the 50 states of the US, it is mandatory to do the SCID, which is another disease, but it's the first sign that the kid is born with an immune system issue. And from there is other tests that are done, and you realize if this child has congenital athymia. Our product was approved in October of 2021. How they're managed is very complicated because, as you may imagine, you have a child, a ultra rare disease. Nobody knows about this disease. You are informed by the state immunologist. So there is a system in the US that all newborns get the test. If there is a flag, there are a couple of immunologists that are assigned by the state that are in charge of following up. They need to find that pediatrician to give this information and start doing some extra tests to see exactly what's the disease. But they already know that there is an immune system issue, so this kid needs to be isolated. And when I mean isolated is that if they have siblings, they need to be homeschooled. And if the two parents work, obviously one ended up being at home. And depending of the job of the parent, they can be exposing viruses to the kid. So from that moment to the moment that the kid is treated is huge isolation for the family. It affects obviously not only the kid, but the family that has this issue. And the process starts to confirm what kind of disease it is, and then the referral to the site of administration. So we got approved and we do our process and manufacture our drug in North Carolina. So you could be in California, Alaska. You need to be, when the time is right, transported to North Carolina, definitely in a private plane, so they can proceed to treat the kids. One of the things that is very innovative of our drug, we are a regenerative medicine. Gene and cell and tissue, we are part of the tissue-based drugs. Our drug comes from our raw material, is the thymus from another kid that is having a process. Like, for example, when they are having a heart surgery, they need to remove part of the thymus to access the heart. So we take that otherwise will be disposed and process it in a manufacturing facility for like 21 days, almost a month, and then proceed to use that re-engineered thymus to operate the kid. And the place where we locate our product is in their leg. After 6 months or 12 months, or sometimes a little more, they start to create their own immune system. We are the perfect example of how to commercialize an ultra rare drug. And we're very proud and we get invited to many conferences because some drugs get approved, but they don't find a way to commercialize it, or sometimes don't have the business model or the complexities of not only commercializing but producing the drug have stopped a lot of regenerative medicines from coming to the market. So in my presentation, I have like 4 buckets. What are the typical challenges that you have in the space of regenerative medicine combined with the rare space? And the first one is generating robust data. So at the end of the day, when you need to be approved by the FDA or you need to be accepted by payers as an option to be included in your standard of care where you are generating, extra costs, etc., it doesn't matter how small you are, they want to see robust data. They want to make sure that even if your population is small and ultra rare, that you have the commitment to, if you don't have it today, because, maybe you just finished your clinical trials, that you are committed to not extrapolate data, but just invest enough on demonstrating that, it makes sense for you to be here and that you're offering the value and the support and the clinical meaningfulness to be added to this kind of disease. So that's one that is very important. We are very lucky that we partner with academia and the institution that was studying this drug for many years. They had 25 years studying the drug, but they were stuck on what's next. They weren't going to bring it to the FDA. They didn't have the resources to change their manufacturing to make it an actual drug that could be regulated by the FDA. And that's where the company partnered with them and took it to the stage of being able to get it approved. In our case, we didn't have the issue of not having enough data because we were able to leverage what the institution had been doing. But I know that it doesn't matter how small you are, everybody wants to see robust data. The second one is complex manufacturing. Even the FDA recognized this. It's difficult to create the right business model for small companies trying to not only bring in the drug to the market, but manufacturing and delivering a drug that I high level described to you that we need an organ to be transformed and then to be able to be regulated as the quality and safety and efficacy that the US FDA required. So how do you manage complex manufacturing? How do you create scalability in a way that it makes sense for the company in a sustainable way, but also, for the patients to be able to treat them? So I will say that's a big bucket. Imagine the raw material of our manufacturing facility comes from other institutions that are willing to donate. And, patients and families are involved in that donation that needs to be done for us to come and process our drug. There is a lot of talk. Even last year, I went to ARM, which is one of the big conferences on regenerative medicines, where somebody from the FDA presented understanding the scalability issues and the potential that different companies could work together to, for example, do potency assays and things that are so scientifically complex that makes manufacturing sometimes very difficult to overcome to create a sustainable way of treating kids. The third one is demonstrating value. With a very small population, complex manufacturing, that our drug needs to demonstrate to the healthcare system and to the patients and the physicians that you have the right value. And sometimes companies underestimate the importance of health economics, of doing that study that I just told you before. These kids don't have an immune system. What does that mean? We have at Sumitomo do a lot of research on how many days do they spend in the hospital a year. So you can compare the value that you bring. See if these kids in average are 250 days in the hospital out of the 365 because they have different diseases. The only way to control sometimes their infections is to be hospitalized in the ITUs and to be isolated. So how to create the right messaging to show payers and everybody you have the options of not treating the kids, and this is what's going to happen, and the cost that would be for everybody. versus treating them. Our drug is only once. It's a once use product, and having the tangible messages on value that you're bringing. And you should feel comfortable. Like, we are all responsible, as you know, in pharma. Each time we're bringing a drug to the market, we know it's going to cost. So do we have all the same narrative of, what is the real, very tangible value? And when we're talking about rare space, our value is not only in our product. Believe it or not, I have worked in so many patient support programs. This patient support program is the most complex and comprehensive that I have worked on. Even though you don't have tons of families, imagine, since the moment the family knows that they have a kid with congenital athymia to the time where they get the treatment, we give education because you want to, preserve as much as possible the health of these patients so they can get the treatment. But I also told you that our product doesn't work immediately. It takes time for the T cells to reconstitute. So you keep educating them and those local pediatricians that are taking care of the kids on what needs to be done to make sure once you have done the treatment that you get the best outcomes. So as our company, we put a lot of priority on that because we know these families are lost. Nobody knows about this disease. Now with the internet, they have access to, Facebook pages of other families, but we have a huge responsibility of helping them and definitely the HCPs that manage the disease locally on what's the right thing to do. That value, as I said, goes beyond the product. And the last one, which is a challenge, but also an opportunity. And I think a lot of companies, especially small companies that are working on rare diseases and don't have a lot of resources to dedicate to different areas, is like how to take advantage or trailblaze on the regulatory approval pathways that are available for these kind of diseases. Sometimes you want to save money, but you end up, not doing the right thing. One of the things that we spent a lot of resources and time and continue to do so is to have the strongest regulatory strategy. In our case, we took advantage of the regenerative medicine advanced therapy designation. We took advantage of the breakthrough designation, rare pediatric disease, orphan drug, and in Europe, we applied for the ATM, which is kind of the RMAT, but it's called Advanced Therapy Medicine Product. And what that allows you to is to have more interactions with regulators because imagine you don't have a drug like this in the market and they don't have a lot of tissue base for rare diseases. So we're educating the FDA at the same time that we need feedback from them. What happened to us is that through the first round, when we tried to get approved, we got a CRL. And the CRL was based on manufacturing. The FDA still didn't feel comfortable that bringing an organ and doing all the procedure, they felt that the manufacturing facility was at the standard of what they needed. From my experience, if you get a CRL, especially if you're a small company, you don't want to waste time because time is money and you need to find what's the next step to make sure that you can get approved. But in our case, from those interactions with the FDA, we learned that it was very different from other areas that they know a lot of, and you are asking for advice. We learned let's step back, let's don't do like an immediate meeting with the FDA and come with more solutions that are more baked than the typical way that you will do it, because we have learned their thinking through all of these designations. And we finally succeeded. As I told you, in October 2021, we were able to modify the manufacturing facility and ensure that, we were complying with all the requirements that the FDA had. The intent of the FDA of creating all these designations is to be able to board you closely. And I feel like for what I see from smaller companies, sometimes they are not aware of it or don't take enough advantage. From my experience, I will tell you, when they see that what you are doing for smaller populations and, the efforts that our company put, I feel it's very satisfying for them to know that there are companies that care for rare and many times are looking for offering us solutions or helping us overcome obstacles.